one of the biggest, maybe I would say it is one of the biggest barriers to growth and perhaps even to seeking forgiveness is this idea or this myth of perfection. And why I mention that is I think that especially when we grow up in a perhaps a an environment where we are expected to be perfect, or maybe we grow up in a place where we're taught that to be a good Muslim, you have to be a perfect Muslim. That in order to be a good anything, like to be a good daughter, to be a good son, to be a good spouse, to be a good parent, you have to be perfect. And that notion is actually so dangerous. And it becomes a barrier for our growth, and it becomes a barrier for our mental and spiritual health. And ultimately, it becomes a barrier for us to seek forgiveness. And I'll explain why. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, in the very beginning of our story, essentially, is the story of our father and our mother, Adam alayhi salam and Hawa. And in fact, Allah, when He chooses to tell us this story, He chooses to tell us about their slip. He chooses to highlight a time in their life where they made a mistake. Now, why does Allah, in His wisdom, why does He choose to highlight a story of their mistake or their slip? And the answer is because He's teaching us a lesson. Allah could have told us about any other moment in the life of Adam alayhi salam and Hawa. I'm sure they lived for a long time. If we know that Nuh, who came after, lived for 950 years. So we know that they were living for a long time at the beginning. But Allah chooses this. Why? Because Allah is teaching us a very important lesson. And that lesson is, as Bani Adam, as the children of Adam, we will all make mistakes. And this is the hadith of the Prophet, ﷺ. He says, all the children of Adam will make mistakes, and the best are those who repent. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is explaining to us that perfection is not the goal. Because if perfection is the goal for goodness, then what will happen when we cannot reach perfection, because by definition we are imperfect, by divine design we are flawed. Allah and His messenger are teaching us this, that every human being will make mistakes. And so if we understand that, we are going to have the capacity to fall and get back up. And that getting back up is one of the most important skills in the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if we believe that we're supposed to be flawless, or that a good person is a sinless person, or that a good, a good daughter, son, spouse, parent, slave of Allah is one that never makes mistakes, then what happens is that when we do make a mistake, as we will by design, right? When we do make a mistake, often a person will be so consumed with shame that they actually stay down. And that is the fear. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that on the day of Arafah, this is the day where the most people are saved from Jahannam. What are we being taught here? We're being taught that we're all going to mess up, and that we need and we can get the forgiveness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is going to be what saves us. It's not going to be a full sense of perfection. It's not going to be never making a mistake or never slipping, but rather it's going to be the ability to get back up with hope and humility. And I think these two traits are actually among the most important: hope and humility. And what that teaches us is that no matter what we do, as long as we continue to come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with hope and humility, Allah loves to forgive. And in fact, even the Prophet ﷺ told us that none of us will enter paradise by our deeds alone, except that Allah has mercy on us. And then the companions asked him, even you, O Rasulullah? And he said, even me. And so what we have when we put all of that together is that every single one of us are in desperate need of the forgiveness and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that none of us would be able to enter paradise without that.